Okay, this is the walking tour that I'm making, so I'm starting on the far left side, which is where we are right now, walking back to the right, or to the east, which is pretty much the direction I came from my hostel. And I stopped at a couple of these here. Maybe I can identify and name them on the way back. And now we'll go down to 2 and 3. So the one with the big tree, this one, is that one there, which looks like Wat Si Koet, or cool. And right across the street should be Wat Thung Yu. And this one I did not enter before, so we are now. This is quite old, very much in a state of disrepair and deterioration. What it lacks to be financed for restoration, who knows? Perhaps like churches, if the congregation is not sufficient, there are not enough people who find this to be the most reverential for their prayers, then perhaps it does not get the money either. Some pretty tile work, although I'm not sure that it was original. Well, it does look old. You can see that it does not get much respect even from those who are responsible for it. What's interesting is, while worn, some of the murals are very bold in color. Not too hard to tell the import of this. Wonder who the blue is. Perhaps a Buddha, an avenging Buddha. Notice how bold the colors are. What a grand use of the background countryside. It was just such a realistic attempt at countryside that partially denoted the shift from the medieval art of Italy to the Renaissance art. Look at this Buddha done in, I suspect this is glass, but probably an allusion to the famous green Buddha, jade Buddha, rather, that's been shifted all over Thailand. And here, interestingly, a grandfather type clock, one of which we saw, I think, in Ayutthaya. I think these are very graphic murals. Almost modern, and maybe they are. Here amongst animals are at least 2 wounded people. And such a plaintive look. Is this perhaps a representation of heaven and hell? Certainly hell at the bottom with the damnation fires, people being thrown into the water, somewhat like purgatory or whatever. The volcanoes evidencing hell, and then the spirit to heaven. Is that what the chariot is? I would suspect. How analogous this seems to much of Christian representation. Can't tell whether the 2 ladies are trying to protect themselves or the rabbits from the ravage of the swordsman. This little structure in good condition with the use of marble facing. And I'm at Wat Chai Phra Kiat, which is one of the first ones I went to before I got to the main starting point of the walking tour. And you'll be able to recognize these last few shots I made in here when I was going to that starting point of this ceiling. And we can add this portion to that. This is a pretty little temple. It sits to the side of the one, the large one we were just in. Notice the rabbit motif at the top. I wonder what that symbolism is. These naga I find particularly pretty because they're not completely new and restored. And it may be that red tile look that it has. Right now we're in front of Wat Phan Tao. So this is Wat Phan Tao. It is a teak temple. This little stupa, which is an entrance, is kind of interesting. Notice again the bird milk. Now this is all done out of what looks like plaster or cement, but interesting little wood doorway. Notice the relief that they've gained off of this. Apparently this temple is not very well revered. I don't know why. Notice the bowls that have been filled with offerings or merits, in these instances for the benefit of the monks here. And these may be synonymous with something I've seen elsewhere, where there might be a whole row of those offering banks, if you will, and people will go down and drop coins in one after another. Apparently the more you drop in, the more merit you get. Well, that sounds like the Catholic Church, or most others. Implied, if not stated. At least here they state it. It's part of the philosophy. Now there the garment looks like it's part of the sculpture itself. Notice the long nagas that surround that rectangular opening. I wonder what these little devices are right here that are hanging here. We can see them. Do they blow in the wind? Let's see. Yep, they do, and they're made out of fabric. Those are some young boys, again, somewhat synonymous to the Mormons. While the Mormons go to proselytize, these folks come into the cities to learn about the scriptures, into the countryside to learn meditation before they go to college or start a career usually. It's expected. And the family gains great merit if they actually join the monkhood. Rather substantial spirit house. Notice the sign telling the dummies, don't enter. Looks like it would be a very fragile, fire-prone building. So I hope it's somehow protected, or they take good care to. I've never seen these baskets like this with those flags on top, which kind of reminds me of the Hindus of Tibet, although I've never been there, and their worship flag. And here they're restoring this stupa. Notice how it has sub-stupas all the way around. It's the first time I've seen that design. The grounds are very pretty here because they have now added this little stream with lots of goldfish in it and little bubblings. How pretty this is. And hopefully it'll have foliage here. Here it looks like there's actually a garden. Oh, look at this. And here a whole little shed, if you will, made of protective leaves with those hanging, whatever they are, lantern type things. This is very pretty. Hopefully this effort will add to and create more reverence for this old teak building. Now here's a stupa made completely of sand and those woven baskets of bamboo, it looks like. Here's some beautiful and unique flowers. They almost look like they were made by some package designer making ribbons. Okay, now we're at number 3, which is Wat Chedi Luang. What I noticed before entering is this incredible tree. I need to get a different perspective to see how thick that is, but it seems like it's thicker on the direction that goes to from my left to my right than what I'm seeing now, which is profound in size. Here you can see an example of where they just blend the whole word together into one. Now that's a very natural thing for them to do, because in their language they don't separate words into words. Separate words, all flows into one big giant thing. Somewhat like the Germans create words. Look at how it looks like it's growing other plants up there on some kind of a broad base. Surely people climb up there once in a while and do something to it, keep it growing like that. So here we are. This yang tree was planted when Prince Koala, 1781-1815, abandoned the city of Pasang and re-established Chiang Mai in 1796. I wonder what the largest one of these and oldest one of these trees is. This apparently gives some kind of history of this place, but it refers to someone named James McCarthy, whoever that might be. This was intended to be a historic commemorative plaque, but obviously allowed to go into disuse. While this is just another temple, what has to be considered intriguing is the remains of this Chedi in the back. A huge monument. This is certainly a knock your socks off structure. They restored, obviously, that upper portion there, what's normally considered rectangular, although here it's indented. The shaped portion of the Chedi is mostly gone. You can only imagine how high that must have soared when it was original. And I wonder what these guy wires are for, perhaps to take material up there to restore it. What's also interesting, it doesn't look like those were ever stairs, but merely some kind of a chute. I wonder if it had any use. Very impressive nagas. And notice the elephants that would have ringed that upper perimeter.
I hope that because I was not.
There's some kind of shrine building, perhaps teak that's been dyed a little, or stained a little bit of purple. And several more little temples, particularly pretty teak one here. The roof fascia looks like it's teak, but I don't know if it's just weathered and not repainted or something. Notice the bells hanging. This is interesting for all of the shiny mirror or mosaic tiles. Notice that interesting design element on top of that little building. And the curious Naga type things, but not really snake-like, more lizard-like. First, until I saw the pigeon moved, I thought it was part of the detail. Here, a reclining Buddha. Notice that it's covered by an actual garment. Next to the reclining Buddha and a couple others, here's this particular Buddha. Almost taking pleasure in his big pot belly. Stylistically, notice the bulging belly. Notice that both of the feet point upward in the meditation position. So apparently upstairs in the classroom someplace. Here an interesting building because of this white entryway so close to the building itself. 4 nagas on top of it. And then the upper stories of teak. Now, I don't know what these large bamboo structures are for, unless they're for some reason some kind of art, or maybe some kind of crane device. It's hard to imagine that they use those to lift that, but perhaps that's the case. You can see the structure itself's interesting and well made. Now notice on the inside of this window treatment, it's a princess without any aggressive overtones. In contrast, here's the front door panel. This is beautifully rich. Purple as a backdrop, and then black with gold coloring on everything else, except for those walls, which are white. How beautiful this is inside, how rich. And there we have 3 Buddhas. Notice the pose with the one hand outstretched, palm facing us. And then a phalanx of, I think they're either Buddhas or facsimiles of prior important monks. And here a very regal audience chair. Now this is a clever design feature. The Naga's tail wraps up around to the top of the door and then intertwines with the other's tail. This, I think, is an antique store, but presumably, if she knows what she's talking about, these were made in the early 19th century, so early 1805, 1810, or something like that. So it's these kind of things that perhaps the wealthy families, or reasonably wealthy families, who live well in this part of Thailand, might buy to decorate their homes. Now notice this 6-headed and 10-armed goddess. What name do you call this? Do you know?
This is Tewaru. Yeah.
So she thinks this may be Cambodian in origin. Here's a pretty little water monument. Would be nice in a garden. Now you kind of have to wonder why these would still be available. Unless they destroyed the Viharn that they were. This Chedi is spectacular because of its gold paint. I just spent about 10 minutes talking to a young monk about why he is a monk. He spoke very good English, and a very good conversation we had. I'm in a small temple complex. It's not listed, but I thought this bell tower was pretty and interesting. It looks like it's just on the balcony of that building, and perhaps it is. This is old and not too well maintained. However, it appears to be revered from all of the snack concessions that are here. This is probably a wat that gets used as much as a civic center, if you will, or a meeting place for folks, as it does a religious site. It's not maintained at all, but I bet it's well used. Notice how all of the Buddhas there are almost completely cloaked. They are cloaked, their torsos, in actual garments. And notice this interesting Chedi. Looks like it just kind of stacked over to the side there. It's not used for much. Like there's stuff inside of it that's just thrown there. There's even bird crap on the floor over here that falls in from the roof. Here's stuff just stored. But I suspect it's religious home to many. This is a fairly large mall area with shops. I don't know what this wall is. Ah, there we are, the Pha Gate. So this is what one of the original gates would have looked like to the city of Chiang Mai. Notice the rolling wheel on the metal that carried the door. And as most of the monuments are all built of this brick but then covered with stucco, I wonder if this wall was stucco. My guess is that perhaps it was not, but I don't know. Say the wall ends here, and then begins this huge waterway that they're made into a pretty nice civic area. As Bill Haynes would call these flying rats. Here's a temple right on the main drag. Buddha right on the front of it. I can find the street that my guest house on, which is right up here somewhere. Then I will go get something to drink and then continue on the walking route. Number 4 in the upper right hand corner should be this one, Wat Chang Man. Now all I gotta do is figure out how to get across this body of water without going back, and I think I go this way. Here's a continuation of the wall and maybe another gate down here, so I should be able to get to that intersection. We're on the inside of the wall right now. Most impressive city wall I think I've seen, other than that which is implied by Rome's, is the one at Zamość in Poland. Huge wall, now being renovated almost totally, a massive project as part of a major tourist effort. This might not have been a gate as much as it was just a corner defensive position. And I'm guessing there was a moat down there in the past. Would make sense. This, I'm guessing, is some attempt at excavation for archaeological purposes. Maybe this cover was designed to protect that area for some reason. Here perhaps a flow through for either air. I think the level of the wall was beneath where I'm standing now, but maybe not. There's a pair of, or set of what looks like authentic stairs, so maybe this was the level that it was on, maybe on a berm. Fountains are always beautiful, and they freshen up and cool the air a bit. I can feel it from here. These are an interesting kind of pinwheel water feature. A nice front of that backdrop of the wall corner. Notice what look like birthday or Christmas presents. That may be presents for the, symbolic of presents for the king or something. Since this is closed, we get a nice view of this armed princess, or Buddha perhaps. Now looking at some of the detail, this looks like a flame up here. Notice that looks like a dragon's mouth right there on the left. And what is she doing with her curiously structured hand? What is that little orb she's holding? What does it symbolize? Notice how the wrist is contorted and that the hand is twisted on the wrist. An artistic license. And here the tail of another serpent. Here to my eyes a somewhat strange looking cobra. This Naga stands on the entrance to the complex. And this is a little interesting temple building, hidden from view pretty much. I just happened to notice it wandering back here. Look at the heart-shaped tassels on the bottom of the clanger part of the bells, probably designed to get them to clang in the wind. Looks like teak, very old teak, painted up on top. And then this all cement down below. Pretty building, probably an office of some sort, but nicely done. Notice the, what look like Buddhas, but might be more illustrative of little supplicants or something. Maybe even princesses, actually. But it's the first time I've seen an array of statues like this on the Chedi or anywhere else. Notice the kind of medallion treatment on the corners. That's novel. There's enough of a breeze here to blow a little bit of the spray on me, which is very refreshing. Some interesting decoration on the outside here. I'm not sure if this is the one I'm trying to get to or not. Here's a large European with his little Thai girlfriend. They're holding hands, something you don't do in Thailand. Personal public display of affection. This is an interesting Chedi because of the decoration on top, and looks like gold mosaic, gold and blue mosaic on that middle portion, and then these relief figurines. Very novel. Of course it's indented here, and then the elephants. And behind me, a very pretty witan with, interestingly, a balcony on top with railings as though it's intended to be used. I assume it is. And then notice along the banister here all these elephants. Kind of analogous to one of the Chedi we looked at earlier that had the figurines around it. And here next to it, an old, abandoned, deteriorating Chedi. This banister naga treatment is unique because here the banister comes down, forms almost a circle, and then the naga rises out from inside of its coil, if you will. Very, very pretty. Now, if the map's any guide, and it's not a very good one, this is Wat Lam Chiang. Lonely Planet maps in the main give you just enough information to get you lost, but they don't give you all the streets, so you don't know where you're going. Can't connect them together. Here's an old Chedi with some nice detail on the top, as well as that fixture on the top. This is the Three Kings Monument. I don't know that Lonely Planet gives any explanation, just puts it in its walking guide. Just part of its usual disconnect of information. You see it had a porch on it, which would be nice. Notice the air venting up on top there. Today they'd certainly have screening. Notice how it's raised up on those posts. You must have modified this at some time, I think, because those look like timbers that are too modern cut. Not to mention the bolts, but maybe not. People eating underneath the house, so it must not be that dangerous. This, I think, is the old woman's prison, which may still be in use. I don't know. But it's interesting, someone has painted the mural of pretty flowers along its wall to backdrop the real flowers. Here, a prison product shop. And a couple of cannon there to This is pretty because it's all white, plus that very nice mosaic at the top of the white part. Elephants at the base, and then the witan. Those look like teeth, don't they? Here's the entrance to this building. Notable here for the carvings or the sculptures. And then the very simple, looks like lotus blossom railings. This compound, even though it's next to the cultural center or museum, is extremely tranquil. Remember the similar artifact like this that we saw in the old Vhuridatto a little while ago this morning, that had stuff still lying around in it. It was in dilapidated condition. This is an excellent one. Don't know what it's for. Maybe it holds some kind of religious relic. Since no one was here, I thought I'd give myself the pleasure of turning the fan on. Look at this old bell. And here, certainly a new, and probably pretty darn expensive, large clock. I wonder what the point of the clock is for. I just thought this pretty array of flowers are plastic, I think, but still kind of a pretty motif. It's just interesting. You keep going into them and there's something different about each one. For example, this bench, I haven't seen anything like that before. And what do these little conical devices hold? Are they just Chedi simulations? The Chiang Chronicle reports that in 1761 a monk of Wat Duang Dee became ruler of Chiang Mai at a time when Chiang Mai was independent for a short period before the Burmese returned again. Nice way of saying came in and toasted the country and governed the country in 1763 to 1774. This is when they literally razed, I think it was Ayutthaya. I thought this building was very pretty. Notice how it's undercut with kind of like a angular frieze underneath each of those upper portions. And then all that remains here, but it seemed like this was a very light and fine detail as opposed to the other decorations on buildings which are very, how can we say, large and over the top almost. But presumably all of the detail that we see here, which was either sculpted or laying in with little pieces of clay or whatever, was all painted at one time. In fact, here we can see just the remains of it. Some of the colors there. Some reds, greens, I think blues. That probably had some iconic figure in it. I don't know if this sign refers to the complex in total or to this relatively small building here. Notice the cement sculptured rather large base. Rather dark in here, but a Buddha up at the front. That looks like a teak back wall. And then more Buddhas. And a place to kneel. This device, or whatever it is, captured my attention. It looks like a fish, but it looks like it could be a string instrument if it were turned upside down. On the other hand, it looks like it might be a naga that went on the corner of a building, perhaps an earlier version of this building. Some of the detail panels on the back wall. Notice the roof treatment. There's a treatment that you see, gosh, where is it? Europe a lot. Christian churches a lot on big doors. That looks like a shield. So this is Wat Umong Mahathera. This is called the Tunnel Pagoda, probably because that walkway goes straight through. Well, no. These are interesting, aren't they? There's a monk inside who's chatting with the folks. There's laughter and so forth. This is one of the things that a monk can evolve into, is a counselor, if you will, a speaker to, an instructor of the public. And for that he may gain some money, believe it or not, a small amount that he can then use to support his parents in their old age, which is one of the goals of both his parents and him in becoming a monk.
ก็เลยปิดไปตามความเป็นจริงอาตมาจะบรรยายที่4เรื่องเรื่องที่1ตั้งมันจะเหมือนเรื่องที่2ตั้ง
Look at the little monster here.
เรื่องที่4ปิดประตูหน้าต่างให้ดูคนอยากดูข้าง
Here another nearby Chedi with some, the upper bell portion was initially done in ceramic tiles. It's starting to wear off now, but it must have been pretty because it's